the best. Finland has the best civil defense shelter network in the whole world. If we were to build it now, would we do it the same? I don't think so. My name is Pasi, Raatikainen, work in the rescue services city of Helsinki in a unit just dedicated for war. If Russia was to try to resolve and start conventional war in Northern Europe, what would we do? I will explore a little about geolocation of Russia, the threat posed by Russia in Northern Europe. Then I will delve into a history of our shelters, why we have built such a network of shelters. And then I will compare to Israel. Different scenario, different solution. And then if I was in Estonia, starting to build the air raid and civil defense shelter network, how would I do it? How much it would cost Estonia? Daring opportunity for me. Now, North Europe. It can be argued in the next war, the North Europe might be the center of operations. Baltic Sea, absolutely critically important for Russia because of oil trade and foreign trade that flows through Finland and Estonia. Not to mention the Atlantic Ocean, which is absolutely critical for Russia to have access to because their nuclear threat, nuclear deterrence is based on submarines based on Kola Peninsula. Russia must control northern high seas in order to protect themselves. If it came to that, Russia has no option than push forward in North Europe, and Estonia and Finland will be in the middle of that mess. If we look about defense of Northern Europe, Finland and Estonia most likely will be area of operations. The battle will happen in Estonia and in Finland. Sweden, Norway, staging area, support area. And Russia is building up their capabilities. They have now 2 armed corpses and 1 army behind our borders, building it up in a case it wants to use it. The threat scenario posed by Russia also affects the civilian society. Now, civilians have been the vulnerable party in all of the wars in the 20th century. The civilians are in greater danger than military in all the fights in the modern era, excluding Russian war in Ukraine. The civilian casualties they are tremendous. But the total civilian casualties in Ukraine are 50,000 killed and wounded. First few months, 22, there was a peak, and then it's relatively stable. What is causing this damage, killed and wounded for civilians, and its aerial threat? We saw the beautiful map of flight vectors yesterday. As you know, Russia is capable of hitting all the parts in Ukraine, and that means all the parts in Estonia and Finland, if it came to that, with I call UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicles, because the missiles and drones, the technologies have merged. You can't really separate them anymore. And Russia is willing to put a lot of effort in attacking civilian society. Over one particular night in Ukraine, Russia was using more than 700 UAVs, missiles, drones combined, and the total production cost over that one night for Russia was about 300 million US. One aerial attack, 300 million euro US, give or take. So if Russia is willing to put so much financial effort trying to hit the civilian society, how much are we prepared to put into shelter system in order to protect civilians from the physical harm of Russian war. Now, let's talk about Finland and the historical path, how we got into this situation, what we have. We have 50,000 shelters in the country, and Helsinki alone, we have more than 5,000 civil defense shelters. We started building this in 1930s, Second World War, and the main threat was gas attacks. So the shelters were built gas tight. Then after Second World War, we figured, okay, it's the bombings, the mass bombings, so not the gas attacks, but let's go for the structural strengthening of shelters. Shrapnels, fragments, overpressure, collapse of the buildings. That was 40s, 50s, and then becomes 60s, and the Cold War and nuclear war. And the threat scenario changed again in Finland. The nuclear war scenario was very different. You have to have the filter systems, you have to have special gas-tight doors, oxygen systems, removal of carbon dioxide from the breathable air, because nuclear war, you have to stay underground for days or weeks. And then the threat scenarios changed again. We come to the 70s, it's still nuclear war, but we start building more and more shelters, smaller shelters, partly because of the financials, and then it becomes 86 and Chernobyl. Nuclear power plant accident. And threat scenario changed again. It's not a war, it's about nuclear power plant accidents. So you don't need to have the structural strength anymore, but radiation strength. And then it becomes 90s collapse of Soviet Union and eternal peace. And we eased our legislation. We started building very lightweight shelters for the nuclear power plant accidents. And then comes the Russian aggression again and the war. So we have a system of shelters. Plant is designed in different era for different threat scenarios, and most of them are outdated for present day. Some of them are 80 years old. Major Punch, built in 70s, they are 30, 40 years ago or old. We have plenty of them, and they are absolutely great for air raid, but for something else, maybe the best in the world is not sufficient enough. We can protect almost 5 million people in Finland. The numbers are great and they are good shelters. But what about Israel? Israel had the similar system than Finland, these very big communal centers, and then becomes Gulf War, 91, 92, and Scuds launched, and the threat of gas attacks in Israel. And they very soon figured out the shelter systems is not good enough because they are too far away. It takes too much time to reach the shelter. They are not accessible. They are staircases. You have old people, you have young people. They never reach the shelter in time because the warning times were maybe 15 seconds, 90 seconds. How far can you go in 15 seconds in a nighttime with your family? You can't go anywhere. So they had to change the system. And they started building mammoths, safe rooms inside of apartments. In order to get into safety fast enough, it must be next door, physically next door. So safe rooms, mammoths started 92. So they do have these miklats, which are these communal centers still there, but the solution changed. And in the locations where you couldn't build mammoths, which is apartment safe rooms, they do have these mamaks, which are on a certain floor, shelter, safe rooms for various apartments, but really close by, nearby, fast enough to get into. So the Israel learned our system based on miklats was not working. So let's compare Finland and Israel. If we take Finland, we can calculate the total cost, historical cost of building that system in Finland is about 7 billion euro. It's a lot of money. And we can protect, theoretically, about 85% of the population. Israel, the cost estimation is more than 30 billion euro. It's extremely expensive system. And Israel can protect about half of the population. Bang for the buck, center of gravity. You have to put your resources somewhere to get the best possible result for the money, because war is about finance. You can fight as long as you have money. So no solution is now perfect. What about Estonia? Let's start with the warning times. If Russia was to use conventional weapons, let's say Estonia, Narva region, no warning time. Artillery shelling, you hear it when it hits. Let's take Tallinn, 200 kilometers from the border, give or take. Hypersonic missiles, Zircon Kinzhal, flight time, 2-3 minutes, and impact. The best possible warning system is Ukraine, 2 minutes airborne, 2 minutes. Is it fast enough? Same situation for Helsinki, 2-minute flight time. And what about Israel? The warning times, what they have there, still Hamas, Hezbollah, rocket, some tens of seconds. They must have really fast system. And if they were to use drones from Yemen, enough of time to warn people. But very different warning time scenarios in Israel, in Estonia, and same in Finland. Our border area, no warning time. Artillery gliding bombs, 80 kilometers reach, no warning time. Central Finland, maybe a few minutes. Ballistic missiles, maybe 1 hour, so plenty. So no solution is suitable for all threat scenarios inside of your country, because the countries are relatively still big. So let's say that you started building the system-based Finnish experience. Big communal shelters, quite expensive, takes time to build, but capable of CBRN protection. Mind you, Russia has used in Syria and Ukraine, can be argued, everything else from CBRN but B. Everything else. So you could build the big shelters like us, but it will take ages to build the network here. It's really slow and expensive, but they are really strong. You can use them every day as a sports hall or swimming hall, what have you. You could have the Israel system starting building safe rooms and floor level safe rooms, and then miklats. Very expensive system, but they are accessible. What about we forget all that and you started strengthening your cellars and basements? They are good enough for conventional wars until it's a direct hit. But then, karma, it happens. But bang for the buck, strengthening the cellars is really feasible solution, an option. They are really fast and they are accessible because they are in your building. Or you could start building temporary air raid shelters on surface level. We did a test run in Helsinki. We built based on concrete blocks, and look how long it takes, how much does it cost. That's for 50 people, 50 people. And they are similar systems used by the defense forces of Finland. So they have been tested, they can withstand the hits, direct hits. So you could have different options, And maybe if I was Estonian starting to building the shelter network now, I do different solutions in the different parts. Eastern part of Estonia, 80 kilometers, gliding bombs, aerial artillery systems, no warning time, and we cannot tell when Russia starts the war. You don't have decades to build, you have to start building now. That's a different area. Let's take Tallinn, capital city, urban area, very slow to get people to a shelter because of staircase and everything. You must have a different solution. And let's take Ämari airbase. We can't exclude possibility of Russia using tactical nuclear weapons for target like that. Must have a different system because air raid shelter is not good enough for, let's say, Ämari region. So if I was Estonian, I would compare bang for the buck. Bang for the buck. How much it costs to build the shelter for one person? On the other end, there are strengthening basements, maybe 700, 800 euro, the cost for one person. If you start building huge bedrock shelters, the cost is about 8,000 euro per person. They are very expensive. Use your money wisely. So, dear Estonians, for the first 2 years, start building temporary air raid shelters in eastern part, fast development, and start strengthening your cellars. We did the calculation, how many buildings you have, how many people you have, the cost estimate. You could be able to protect from the air raids about 1 million of your population within 2 years with the relatively low cost. Remember, 300 million euro over one night when Russia is attacking you. Then after first 2 years, start building safe rooms in new buildings. Because retrofitting safe rooms in your existing buildings is relatively expensive. But build them because you can access them fast enough. It's very costly, but let's say in Tallinn it might be the option because building underground is not necessarily your solution. So over the next sort of 10 years, about a bit more than 1 billion euro, you can start protecting 100, 200,000 people in the capital. And after that, for the next 10 years, start building these miklats or big shelters because they are CBRN capable and the lifespan of big shelter is decades. It's cost effective in that sense. So, to summarize, over 20 years, the overall cost based on our estimation for Estonia would be a bit less than 3 billion euro. You could start building something really fast now, in case Russia really attacks fast. And then you build different shelters in different parts of the country. And that might be the solution also of Finland if we start it now. So, based on the geolocation, build different shelters. Have them accessible really close to people wherever they are, day or night time. Use them every day as storage room, parking lots, what have you, because then it becomes cost effective. Also, safe rooms are storage rooms. And train your people how to use them. Like in Taiwan, they have this one-on exercise once a year. Everybody goes to a shelter. They close cities down physically. You have to train them. But what if I provoke a little bit. What if I said the building of physical shelters are useless? The reason is, let's take Ukraine. I love Ukrainians. I wish all the best for you. Civilian society, physically killed and wounded, 50,000. this accumulating scientific research evidence comes from Ukraine over the last 2 or 3 years. Mentally, the country is so much damaged. Peer-reviewed scientific evidence is that more than half of Ukrainians have PTSD. Maybe the mental damage is greater for the nation than the physical damage. Where do you put your financial efforts? Building shelters, which are must, don't take me wrong, but maybe we should put a lot more money in order to have mental shelters, protecting the mental security of civilian population because of the side effects of the war. And maybe that's the weapon Russia is really doing in Ukraine, hitting the civilian society in order to break mentally the nation. But if it came to that, if Russia was to test us, to try our resolve in Northern Europe, we will do fine if together among friends we decide that we will do fine. And last but not least, Slava Ukraini.
Thank you for the excellent presentation. I jump straight into the questions.
Please do.
Are there regulations in place for the likely targeted industry, especially critical infrastructure, to ensure there are shelters for their personnel in place? Or is it only for housing?
Oh, okay. So the question is, do we have a regulation in order to protect the infrastructure or the personnel?
The personnel working in infrastructure. Is your regulation only, as I read from here, is your regulation only for housing areas, or is it also for the industries and then where people are not particularly living?
Yeah. To simplify the situation, our Building Act dictates, or is it Rescue Act? Somebody help me there later. Whenever we build a new building above a certain size, you must build a shelter. So it might be housing, it might be industrial building, and nevertheless, you must build a shelter. So in theory, all the big buildings do have a shelter, regardless of the intended use of the building. That's simplified version of it.
Yep, but it's a very good principle. Yeah. Are there practice examples from Finland on how to make shelters accessible, for instance, wheelchair users or people with disabilities?
Well, that's my point. Our system is not accessible. They are not built in the minds that vulnerable people or disabled or young or very old can reach them. That's a technical problem. We don't have solution I can give you. One Israel solution is to have safe room. So it's room next to your living room, sort of. I have problems, no solution, sorry.
How do you balance the need to prepare still also for nuclear war, like the CBRN shelters, and yet build up air raid shelters? How do you decide who gets the better protection?
In Finland, we are. It's easy for us because every shelter we build must be CBRN capable. All of them, big or small. But my point is that they are too far apart. It's too far away from me if I had to go there. So possibly our next solution is to supplement the system, which is absolutely needed, is to have also temporary air raid shelters, which are good enough for the air raids. But all our shelters, they're expensive because Russia, Soviet Union, CBRN, weapons of mass destruction. Sauron, sorry.
It's a bit of a complicated question, but I hope I got it right. So evacuation plans are really important. But do you think also about the real-time data changes in case large-scale disaster happens? So change in building, sheltering capabilities, etc. in real time. But if you need to make very quick changes?
Quick changes in
procedures, or I get it like, so how do you, is it something very static what you already built, or there is any, let's say, room for adoptions also in your system?
I don't know what the main point of the question is, so I answer something else.
Yep, well, please.
We can use the shelters as they are as an air raid shelter right now. If we had to make them gas tight, let it be CBI and let it be a nuclear power plant accident, it takes about 3 days for us to remove all kind of equipment, close the filters and what have you. So we can use them in the accident scenarios also, but obviously they are not ready right now for nuclear power plant accidents because the filter systems and lines. So we can use them in the various scenarios, but now, honestly, the main, and my unit works only for war and Russia, not for Russia, against Russia.
Against. Thanks.
Sorry. So we are just thinking how to use them in war scenarios. So if you're asking about accidents, don't ask me. Ask my colleagues sitting in the back row. Yeah.
Your recommendation was on Estonia, mostly taking from Finnish experience, but what to tell for the, let's say, rest of Europe, 2 countries geographically a little bit more distant? Is it, let's say, right to buy nuclear weapons or do something else?
I sidestepped that because we took a lot of effort trying to analyze the geolocation and the building base in Estonia and the population. It would be really scary and daring and foolish to start talking about the next country because they are all very different. And Estonians, you are our closest friends. So you first, right?
That was very quick. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. There is an excellent question, and I would like to end with it. Your point made with the physical, not only with the physical protection, but also the mental part was really good. It was, and then very thoughtful. So the question is that how do you turn a physical shelter into a mental shelter as well?
Come next week in Finland, I will be speaking about mental security, mental health, and where you get the best leverage. And as a teaser, it seems that the best mental health or damage mitigation does not happen on individual level. It works on societal level. The structures around a person are more important than the physical circumstances for individual when we talk about nations and also for individuals. So I sidestep. It's not that important what kind of shelter you have in order to protect you from mental damage. We have to concentrate on totally different level, societal level. But next week, come to Finland.
Thank you, Pasi, for covering this very broad and making it a very broad topic. Thank you very much. All the best.